along, we're going to talk a little bit about grid templates and different ways to make them. So the way that I'm going to show you how to do it in this tutorial, it's almost similar to ASCII art, if you're familiar with that. So that's when images are kind of made out of characters. So here's an example of that over a graphic and some text. So we're basically going to make the grid for the front and back of a business card using percentages. So this idea of columns going down across the top and then rows going side to side, we're going to continue on with. So the way that that's going to work is we're going to graphically lay it out with code. So we're going to have quotes and then some dots across the top that are going to signify blank space. Then we're going to have a second row here where we're actually laying out our content, the front and the back of our card, and then another row of blank content. So if we come over here, here's kind of like a visual of what we're doing. We're putting the front of the card, the back of the card, and then we have spaces where we need margin. So if we head over to VS Code and see what it looks like there, we have a container. This is saying, take my container and make it occupy 100% of the height of the screen. This line of code is what enables CSS Grid to be used. This is giving us some gap between our grid. And then here are the percentages if you want to follow them exactly how I have them for this demo. So here I'm saying build me a 5-column grid. I want the first column to be 7.5% of the screen, the second column, which is going to be the business card front, to be 40%. Then I want a 5% margin in between those, then another 40% for the back of the card, and then 7% for the last column. You can also see here, because I'm using this @media rule, this grid, this kind of grid, is only going to be activated when my screen is 1200 pixels or more. So that's a pretty safe bet for desktop viewing, right? So large tablets or desktop devices will display this. So after I build my columns with code, then I'm going to build my rows. So my first row here, this is my first row, is going to be 10% blank space. And then my business cards are going to be 80%, and then 10% for the last row as well. And then this is the part that's like similar to ASCII art. So I basically have this grid-template-areas, and then I make a visual of what I want this area to be. So basically what that is it's quotes, and then a period equals a blank space, hit my space bar, type another period, space bar, period, space bar, period, space bar, period. So this will only work if it mimics the exact structure that we set up here for the columns and rows. So because I laid out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I have to have 5 dots across here. Because I laid out 1, 2, 3, I have to have 3 going down this way. This will work with other units of measurement too, such as pixels, but I'm going to keep working with percentages, trying to make this as responsive as possible. The other 2 things that I have to check too, one is that I need to, somewhere be saying like what is F and what is B, right? I have to set those 2 grid areas somewhere. So even if you hover over it in VS Code, it's going to say that it specifies the named grid areas, which are associated with a particular grid item. So if I scroll up a little bit higher on my code, wherever you have your dot front card and your dot back card, you're just going to have to add 1 line of code to each of those areas. So for example, here I have grid-area F and grid-area B. So that's where I'm kind of putting those text setting those grid areas so that later I can place them somewhere in a grid. And then the other thing you want to make sure that you have is in your index.html, you want to make sure that you have a div with the class of container that wraps every single thing on your page. So again, if I click in this between this opening D and I scroll all the way down to the bottom of my page, I should see that close there. Looks like I actually have a couple extra tags, closing tags. So let me just go in, erase those, double check. Yep, okay, so yeah, those were just extra that I had at the bottom. Okay, so now if I launch Live Server, let's see what this looks like now that I have all three of those things in place. So there is my business card, and what I should see is when I shrink it small, it should snap to my mobile layout. So again, I'll make this bigger on screen so we can see what it looks like. So here is how I've set all of my kind of resting space around it, and then I've assigned the front and the back of the card a location of where to be. So if I head over to my examples for my wireframes that I drew up, you know, it might be helpful in your sketchbook to draw sort of like a little map for yourself of like, because yours might be slightly different than mine, right? But think about how many columns you want to have going across. Think about how many rows you want to have going down. Use dots to signify blank space, letters to signify where you want to place the actual content. And then this was where I was figuring out how I wanted my percentages to work. So I knew I wanted about 10% there, the cards to be about 80, 10% for the last row. Then I was also figuring out my columns going across, so 740, 540, 7.5, and then the resulting layout that I get is based on that. So again, I have to make sure that I have this @media rule, my dot container that wraps everything on my page, and my code like that. Thanks so much for watching.